Shootings, especially those broadcast around the world, traumatize communities and our collective consciousness. What would push a perpetrator, a young man, to murder somebody for thousands to see?
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis.
Democrats own this 100%.
Oh, please. Why don't you start with the President of the United States?
Yet, if we pull back the curtain on some of the most devastating shootings of the past half-decade, there's an obvious through line. And no, it's not some political or racial ideology. It's a type of extremism built by and for the deep webs of the internet, where the mode of communication, of hate, doesn't originate from the most extreme fringes of society, but from entire generations, my generation's pop cultural zeitgeist. Which leaves me wondering, how did we get here? And can we do anything about it? Similar to the cult-like influence that the Columbine shooting in 1999 has had on a generation of school shooters, the massacre at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand serves as a dark cultural landmark for the era of internet violence we are experiencing today. In March 2019, 28-year-old Brendan Tarrant killed 51 people in the deadliest terrorist attack in New Zealand's history. It was brutal, but that's not the only reason the shooting shocked the country and the world. Just minutes before committing the attack, Tarrant posted on the now defunct online chat forum 8chan. And that's exactly what he did. The gruesome videos of the live-streamed attacks spread like wildfire across social media, even as social media platforms frantically tried to take the video down. It was an attack seen by millions on social media, yet it was clearly intended for chronically online people. In his 74-page manifesto, Tarrant did rattle off dozens of white nationalist talking points, but significantly, he also mentioned the popular YouTuber PewDiePie. For many who aren't young and steeped enough in internet culture to know PewDiePie, this reference is at best confusing and at worst incomprehensible. Could this reference to the popular YouTuber be part of a broader political message? And if so, what was it? However, those who knew about PewDiePie and the online movement to keep him from being deplatformed on YouTube knew that the reference might not have a deeper meaning after all. It could have just been an ode to a deep online culture, one with its own language of satirical and esoteric memes that the shooter had immersed himself in. And that's kind of the point. As the New York Times put it, the goal, if there was one, may have been to pull a popular internet figure into a fractious blame game and inflame political tensions everywhere. This type of violence, which the FBI has recently categorized as nihilistic violent extremism, is essentially violence that is not tied to one particular ideological framework and fits within the philosophical concept of nihilism, the idea that life and society, at least in its current form, is meaningless.
There is a strand of extremism that defies political characterization or categorization.
Mariana is a technology and law policy advisor at NYU, where she specializes in policy solutions that combats extremism and protects human rights online.
Those radicalized users kind of pick and choose from different ideologies that might not even fit together very coherently, mix them with their own grievances, specific, personal grievances, and then a desire to perform online to gain fame.
And while the application of nihilistic philosophy in the Christchurch terror attack represents the most extreme and vulgar application of it, nihilistic worldviews are now incredibly common among young people, especially around issues like the climate and the economy. And while the world certainly faces huge challenges, social platforms are only amplifying them and spreading hate and violence faster than ever before. That's something that's especially true on semi-private chat forums like Discord. Discord, which is immensely popular among youth, especially young men, initially started as a conversation forum for gamers, but has now gone way beyond that. And for the most part, Discord is non-violent and non-political. However, unlike other social media platforms that have been forced over the years to put in place greater content moderation measures to weed out extremism, Discord and other gaming-adjacent platforms have not come under the same scrutiny. That's due in part to the fact that these platforms are decentralized instead of corporately owned, which gives individual users the ability to stay anonymous and ultimately handicaps regulators and researchers' ability to understand the actual scale of extremist problems on the platforms. And even when platforms like Discord try to do content moderation, it's not an easy task and can often be too little, too late. In a recent study, the Anti-Defamation League tested Facebook, Discord, and Roblox, all platforms where users can create private spaces for their moderation of extremist content. Over the course of 2 weeks, researchers posted a range of extremist content to these platforms. The study found that Facebook was the only platform that took action to remove the extremist content proactively. However, this was before Mark Zuckerberg announced that Facebook's parent company Meta would stop the proactive moderation measures that it had in place previously in the US. And this lack of proactive action has led to real-world consequences, with several shooters posting their plans to these platforms before committing the atrocities. And now, even as Discord and other private forums face more scrutiny over the extremist content that lives on their platforms, extremists are still finding ways around it.
When it comes to extremism and extremist language that evolves so quickly, deliberately, those actors develop a lingo that is constantly evolving to evade moderation.
This lingo, often rooted in mainstream internet culture, not only muddies the water for moderation, but normalizes radical, violent ideas for isolated people that may be predisposed to more violent images and rhetoric.
Authorities say that Robinson used the social media platform Discord to send messages about the rifle and the ammunition that was used in the shooting.
For as shocking as the public execution of Charlie Kirk was, the potential for violence against him was anything but that. Kirk built his media and political empire by being chronically online. So even before Tyler Robinson was taken into custody, it seemed likely that the perpetrator would be an individual who was chronically online as well. And then the messages on the bullet casings were revealed.
Notices, bulges, capital OWO, hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point, up arrow symbol, right arrow, and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols.
What does that even mean? That's what many, including Utah's Governor Spencer Cox, were wondering. Suddenly, those immersed in video game and internet culture started to clarify. One engraving was really just instructions for blowing up a bomb in the video game Helldiver 2. Another one was just a reference to the online furry community. For those who care deeply about Charlie Kirk, or those who just care about free speech, this childish, shallow messaging is actually kind of infuriating, and leaves us looking for a deeper ideological meaning when there may not be one. And while Robinson didn't livestream the attack himself, others certainly did for him. Within minutes, millions around the world had watched the gruesome murder of the conservative activist at Utah Valley University. And even though traditional media outlets didn't show the gruesome moment that Kirk was shot and killed, it didn't really matter. It leaves me wondering, where do we go from here? We are living in an era of violence that is gruesome, but hard to pin down, because in many cases, there's no one place, no one ideology to blame, no matter what politicians and media personalities will tell you. But one thing is for sure, social platforms, especially semi-private ones, play a central role in this new era of violence. And with that comes responsibility.
Companies have machine learning powered tools to detect that content proactively. They also, should have user reporting tools that are easily accessible for users to quickly flag and for those reports to be escalated to human reviewers who hopefully have a knowledge of extremist language.
The Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism is helping lead the charge in this effort. Founded in 2017 by Meta, Microsoft, YouTube, and X, the organization had grown to over 30 tech companies by the end of last year. Among the organization's initiatives, members participate in HSDB, a cross-platform database used for flagging extremist content in order to stop its spread. That's overwhelmingly positive and a signal that tech companies are taking this problem seriously. But as we've seen, there's only so much that tech companies can do to try to eliminate extremism and online radicalization. And that's due in part to a more complicated, and some would say even more dangerous problem: the social isolation of young men. A study this year found that 1/4 of US men under 35 report feeling lonely, which is among the highest in the Western world. That's incredibly concerning, especially because we're increasingly seeing private chat forums filling that loneliness void. Numerous studies over the years have highlighted the impact that loneliness and isolation can have on young men's potential participation in extremist groups, including incel communities that can call for violence against women. And honestly, even in doing a lot of research about this, there's not really an easy solution. However, the focus is clear. Figuring out ways to engage young men outside of their digital universes in which they are shown purpose and meaning is probably the best and most substantial way to help deal with this era of meme violence that we find ourselves in.